addendum to that? Okay. I'm going to be connecting implicitly anyway, 3 Bible verses. Proverbs 29:20. The glory of young men is their strength. 1 Thessalonians 4:16-17. That's the one where we're caught up in heaven and the dead shall go first, and Jesus meets us and says we can fly. And of course the rapturists think that's the rapture mistakenly. And Matthew 22:30. For in the resurrection they neither marry nor are given in marriage, but are as the angels of God in heaven. And the title of my little talk here is The Scrambler. When I was a boy, someone told me when I was a little boy, some grown-up told me, the peak of manhood, the peak of your physical fitness as a man will be between the ages of 19 and 23. They were very specific about that. But I remembered thinking, wow, what's that going to be like? And when my parents would take myself and my brothers to amusement parks once in a while, most amusement parks have this ride that most people call the Scrambler. And I guess it is kind of a scrambler. It's kind of a centrifuge. There's like 3 or 4 long arms, and it spins around, and then dangling from the end of each arm, you probably have seen it, is some bucket seats, and that spins around, and so the person next to you gets squished, but if you're sitting on the outside. But that was always my favorite ride, because I would do a thing with my weird imagination that would make me wonder, is this what it's going to be like when I'm 19, 20, 21? When it spins you all the way to the extremity here, and the machine is just about to propel you over there, I would pretend I could push off with this outer foot, and that it was me propelling myself over there. And I would do that, and then when I would be over there, I would do the same with the opposite foot, back, forth, and I would think, wow, when I'm strong and agile at my peak, what's that gonna be like? Will I kind of be able to do that? And I kind of was a little bit when I finally got there. These days, Traintown in Sonoma has one of those rides, and when I take my children there, and it's one of the rides that grown-ups can go on with their children, and so I make sure I do that. These days, long past my physical prime here, I do the same thing, though. I make sure I'm sitting on the outside, so I'm not squishing my child, but I do the same thing. I pretend that it's my foot about to launch me over there, and that it's my foot, my strength about to launch me over there. Only now, in my weird imagination, I imagine I'm doing it in my resurrected body. Because we're going to be like angels. And in at least one verse, we're going to be able to fly. And Jesus walked through walls. So I'm thinking, I'm going to be able to do some things I could never do, even at my peak. When I was at about middle school age, a very young teenager, just hitting puberty, I got a weight set. My uncle gave me a weight set, and I started working out in my bedroom all the time. I was getting ready for that 19, 20, 21, 22, I guess. And I got to be kind of, in my teenage years, I got to be kind of a workout warrior. Then at age 17 and 18 in high school, I played high school football, sort of. I actually played on teams coached by what is very probably the most successful high school football coach in the history of the state of California. He won multiple championships, not only the teams that I was on, but even on other schools. The guy was incredibly He knew what he was doing. Harry Welch was his name. I was the fastest player on my football team. And I was, for my size, the strongest. The only two guys that could bench press more than me were two great big linemen, so they better be able to bench press more than me. And I did absolutely nothing on the field. Nothing. Years later, I ran into my high school football coach, and I said, "Hey, Harry, how you doing?" When you graduate, you don't have to call him coach anymore, of course. "How you doing, Harry?" And he said, "David, you always look like you were afraid to make a play on the field, afraid to stand out." And I said, "That's very perceptive of you, Harry. You nailed it. Because in my home, to stand out made you a target for abuse, verbal and psychological abuse from my mother." I remember being a freshman in high school, 9th grade, and I had learned by then school was easy for me, but I learned I didn't even have to try in school to get my B-. I became Mr. B-, because by that time my parents stopped caring about my grades. My mother was too busy being my mother, and my father was working 2 jobs to pay for everything, and no doubt to escape the verbal abuse from my mother. So they didn't care about my grades anymore, so I didn't either. I passed my classes and got my C+, my B-, and that was it. Well, then in 9th grade, I took Spanish 1. Now, and I've learned a lot in subsequent years, and I know a lot about personality types and learning styles, and it's very evident God gave a personality type to me that was supposed to have been very good at learning languages, especially written languages. And when I ran into Spanish 1, the first time I ever took a foreign language, I really was liking that class. I was doing my homework voluntarily and diligently. And I remember sitting doing my homework on the dining room table, and my mother walked by. And she said, "What are you doing?" And I said, "Doing my Spanish homework." And she said something just so cutting, so strategic. She saw that I was starting to succeed at something. She knew just how to pop that bubble. She got it. And I don't want to repeat what she said. But yeah, that took care of that success. And another thing I've learned in recent years, my mother had and has what secular psychologists call a personality disorder. One of the many horrific things a personality disordered person does and is they apparently deep down inside they're always afraid that loved ones are going to abandon them. And they think somehow in their twisted minds that if you succeed at something, you're going to go away and abandon them. They want to keep you dependent on them, hamstrung and dependent. So they study you. They spend their time studying you. It's really insidious. It's as bad as physical abuse, definitely. It's more insidious. It's psychologically insidious. They study you, and whenever they see you starting to succeed, they know just what to say, just what to do to pop that bubble and keep you in place. I had a bad breakup in my early 20s with someone I shouldn't have been with, I'm sure anyway. And I took it way harder than I should have. I want to get in a time machine and go back and grab myself and just wake up. This was your peak, remember? What are you feeling sorry for yourself? Look how handsome you are. Nah, I was too busy feeling sorry for myself. But it had to happen because that's how I got saved. And I remember saying a prayer shortly after that, sometime after that. More than one, but there's one I remember. And I asked, Lord, could you send me somebody? I guess I didn't expect he would do it. I had, in my 20s, I had this, for a long time, I had this one job. Just a boring computer cubicle job. And the employees, we would like write Post-it notes to each other just to pass the time and kill the boredom. We could listen to music with headphones. We listened to our CDs. And they hired this one new gal. And we, just like anybody else, we'd pass notes, try to goof off a little bit to kill the boredom. I quickly noticed something was weird about her. Any note I got from her, any facial expression, any word she said, it was like it made me itch in my brain a little bit. It was something I couldn't put my finger on. But it dawned on me that everything she does reminds me of me. How is this? I've never had this happen before, never had it happen since. But, I mean, little details. One time I shared a CD with her, a music CD, and there was a particular thing about this CD that I liked about the music that nobody else would have picked up on. But sure enough, when she returned the CD, and she loved it, of course, there was a Post-it note where she was highlighting, pointing out the same thing I liked about it, the same very specific thing, and I had not prompted her. It was like she could read my mind and I could read hers, and it was like God had put a mold, put a brain in me, waited a few years, and used that mold and put it in her brain, gave her brain out of the same mold, and then he broke the mold. I would always have scoffed at that overused, hackneyed word, soulmate, had I not met her. One day, she needed a ride home from work, and she had a boyfriend who, sure enough, turned out to be an abuser. Later on, I drove her home, and I walked her up to her doorstep, and all of a sudden, her arms were around me, and her forehead was right here. And I felt something, but I didn't know what it was. It was something I didn't recognize, and it scared me. I had never experienced that. And because I didn't recognize it and it scared me, instead of doing what I should have done, I just faded away over the next few days and weeks, just kind of started to distance myself. And it came up again later on. I had another really good chance later on, a really good chance, but no. I wasn't programmed for that, to recognize what that was. I eventually went on to marry my mother. Don't all guys. I thought I was doing something different. Consciously, I was doing something different. Subconsciously, oh no. All I was doing was finding a more calculating, predatory version of my mother. It turned out 18 years went by, well, 14 with the marriage, yeah. But it turned out, unlike my father, I did have an ultimate boundary that could not be crossed. And when she crossed it and would not uncross it, that was it, divorce. That was 2014. I looked up that gal. You know, I figured it would be really hard, but with the internet, I was surprised how easy it was. And we corresponded a little bit. caught up. And it was just like old times. I was reading her mind, she was reading mine. It was, wow. And there's never any conflict, no argumentation, no, like I had for a decade and a half in the ensuing years. She was happily married, living on the other side of the country. But I told her about the scrambler. And I said, listen, in heaven, we're going to have these resurrected bodies, and we're going to be able to do crazy things. And there's also, apparently, we're going to be like angels, and there's going to be something above friendship and above marriage. And I told her about the scrambler thing I used to do, and any normal person, 99.9% of the population, would have said, you are so weird. Not her. You see, when you have the exact same weird imagination, the weirdness doesn't even get noticed. And I said, in heaven, in our resurrected bodies, would you do like a scrambler dance with me? Oh, she loved it. She said, you know it. So in closing, I can just tell you, there are times when God answers prayers knowing you're going to be too stupid to accept it. But he knows that years later, you're going to be able to look back and say, my God answers prayers. Wow. And then you can never, ever say he doesn't answer prayers ever again. Thank you.